I'm gonna do a quick demonstration on how to bake textures. Of course, before I can bake a texture, I need a model. So let me add a monkey head. Next, this object needs a material, so I'll go ahead and give it a material. I'm gonna call this bake from. Then in my shading tab, I will use Node Wrangler, so I can do Control T to add an image texture with all the UV and mapping stuff plugged in. I'll go ahead and hit open and find, here we go, I'll do a cheetah tile. So we got our cheetah monkey here. What comes next? I need to jump back to the layout tab, switch to rendered view, and it looks like I am in Eevee, so I'm actually going to switch to cycles. That is necessary. Unfortunately, as of now, Eevee cannot bake textures, so switch to cycles, GPU compute, since I've got the hardware for it. For the sake of testing, I'm dropping this render down to 32, but if it was a final render, I would crank that way up to like 1 or 2,000. But yeah. So this texture right here is how things will look when they bake. So I will go ahead and I'll get a bake setup. So I will duplicate my head here. So this has our bake 2 material. How do I want to name these? I'm going to call this bake from, and this one here I'm going to call bake 2. Or this could just be the final mesh. Like one of these, the one that has the bake image on it, is the one that you keep ultimately. But that's good enough just for generating the textures. So bake from has our bake from material. Bake 2 needs a new material. So I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to go bake 2, and I'm actually going to disconnect that cheetah image, and I'm going to make a new one. Again, if I was doing a final image render, I would crank these up to like 4K or maybe even 8K, depending on what it needed to be. But for this, I'm just going to call it bake. 1024 is fine, and I'll hit OK. So now, I think we're just about there. I select bake from, then I hold Control and select bake 2. Then I go to my render properties tab, and there's another sub option here called bake. Let's twirl that down. I would like to bake selected to active, so I will check that box. Extrusion is kind of handy. I'm going to do 0.001. It's nice to have like just a little bit of padding between the two objects for the bake. Anyway, that should be everything. So I'll go ahead and hit bake, and there we go. That's what I got. It's really dull, and the reason for that is because we are literally baking like the environment lighting. So if I switch to world and I change this background color to like kind of a bright bluish color, and then switch back to object mode, well, it doesn't matter if I switch back, but if I bake again, now I have the colors as seen here. And I will go ahead and toggle the viewport visibility of the bake 2 just so we don't have overlapping geometry. So the power in this really comes from like setting up environment lighting and placing it strategically around an object. So if I put in just some random point lights, maybe crank these up to 1,000 watts, and then yeah, just kind of place them strategically around the monkey head. Got a red one, maybe this could be more green. So we got red, green, then the environment's kind of a blue light. If I then, you don't need to be in the shading tab, but that's my preference just because I can kind of see the result as soon as I'm done. If I select bake from, then bake 2 and hit bake, there we go. Now I have the lighting baked into the image. And what's great about that is, like back here outside of render view, if I turn off the lights and just have, here we go, bake 2, I have what is effectively like baked lighting on my model without any lights in the scene. So I can even like switch to, I guess that doesn't make too much of a difference. Yeah, that's kind of what you get out of it. I will point out, if we look at this image, you see how grainy it is. That's because of the low sample count So that's how you fix that. Just bump up the sample. So when you do your final render, just take it up to 1,000 or higher, and you'll get rid of most of that. And then here you see these kind of hard edges. Well, that's just geometry. To fix that, we could do a couple things. I could add a subdivision surface and just crank it up to like 3 subdivisions, and you want to do the same for both, otherwise you will bake like all of this choppy stuff where one, like the geometry is cutting through, that will be in the bake. So we'll do another subdivision so we have a very smooth head, and then I'll take it one step further and go over here to shade smooth on both of these. So now I'll select bake from, then I'll select bake to. I'll go to my bake option here, click that, let it run, and now we get like a much smoother bake coming around these corners than what we had before. Gosh, what else can I show? You know, I think that about covers it. I guess just for the sake of demonstrating, I will bump this up to 256. So if we look at some of these problematic spots, like here, how grainy this is, if I go ahead and run a bake, it'll take just a little longer the higher you have it. But once that finishes, we should see a notable difference in the amount of noise. Yeah, okay, so it just finished and that looks so much better. It didn't help much here, but that's actually geometry inside the body that's not seen regardless. Okay, well, there you go. That's a quick lesson on how to bake materials, or bake lighting for that matter, onto an object. One last tip I should share is that you are not limited to like a combined bake with all this lighting. You can do a diffuse, and you can do color only. So if I bake color only, whoops, I gotta select these. So bake from, bake to, and then hit bake. Once that's done, check it out. I have just the colors unwrapped appropriately. You could also do the direct and indirect, which I believe does the lighting. So any of the lights in the scene, I should have turned down my sampling for this, will be visible. Yeah, so here we have what is essentially kind of a light map, relative to like the color of the world and the various colors of the lights pointing on this object. But you got a lot of options in here, like you can bake just the glossy, you can bake just the roughness, or the shadow or UV, which I think is based on like the normal mapping. But yeah, some good options there. But I find myself rambling, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish this recording. Yeah, thanks for watching.